In 2015, the developers of BeamNG held a public Q&A session. When asked how long the game would remain in early access, they said it's gonna take at least 12 months until each feature complete. Now, that was obviously a cautious estimate, but I don't think anyone expected at least a year to turn into over a decade. Because unless they surprised us with the full release in the next 3 months, 11 years will have passed since that statement was made, and the game is still in alpha. The engine's vast potential has become a double-edged sword. It's a super versatile sandbox, but nothing seems truly finished. Work needs to be done at every turn. Literally. The game is trying to do everything at once. It has become the jack of all trades, but the master of none. I recently described this as an identity crisis, but nothing could have prepared me for the response. Over 1,000 of you flooded the comments to debate the state of the game. Half of you defended the developers, saying that perfection takes time and it's ready when it's ready. The other half argued that after a decade, early access has become a lazy excuse against criticism. Clearly, the community is torn. So we have to ask, is BeamNG stuck in a perfectionist trap? Or is this forever alpha the only way a simulation this complex can survive? It's no secret that developers are obsessed with details that other games either fake or completely ignore. The attention to detail is arguably one of the game's biggest appeals. Even after 10 years of playing, you are guaranteed to find little things that blow your mind. There's a reason attention to detail compilations get thousands of views. Take the bypass shock simulation. Instead of just animating a suspension moving up and down, BeamNG simulates the fluid dynamics flowing through the external bypass tubes to create 5 separate damping zones depending on exactly how compressed the suspension is. This complex system is the reason a trophy track can hit a jump at 100 miles per hour without tearing itself apart on the landing. But now be honest, if they fake this effect, would you even know? Probably not. Don't get me wrong. This dedication to realism never fails to amaze me. The devs are effectively building real cars in a digital environment. It's what makes BeamNG, BeamNG. And whatever I say in this video doesn't change that. Maintaining that realism should be the priority. But when you aim for macro perfection, you risk holding back features that the community is actually asking for. In fact, you can trace virtually every complaint back to one underlying issue: the prioritization of perfection over functionality. Nowhere is this philosophy more obvious than the AI. BeamNG's traffic is notorious for being unpredictable, chaotic, and frankly, stupid. If you want a breakdown of just how broken it is, I strongly recommend watching Forjua's video on the topic. But in short, it just struggles to do things that games from the early 2000s had mastered. How can a studio that excels at running complex soft body physics in real time fail to program a computer to drive around a corner? It's certainly not a limitation of the game engine. Real-life manufacturer Audi uses BeamNG to train their autonomous driving models. If Audi can trust this engine to simulate safety scenarios for real humans, why can't the game's own traffic figure out a 4-way stop? The answer is, once again, over-simulation. Unlike almost every other game, BeamNG forces its AI to actually drive. It doesn't follow invisible rails, but rather has to manage traction just like you do too. The concept is fascinating, but in practice it just doesn't work yet. And this is where the stubborn realism-first approach starts to break the immersion. There should be a toggle to activate a cheating AI. Simple, rail-based traffic that actually functions. Until their real AI is ready, let us use a placeholder that works. And no, the existing simplified traffic setting doesn't count. That only simplifies the physics to improve performance. We can see the same stubbornness with features like paint scratches or terrain deformation. Most developers just slap on a simple texture overlay and call it a day. Doing the same in BeamNG might be harder because of the soft body physics in an outdated game engine, but it's not impossible. The problem is that the devs refuse to add anything unless it's physically perfect. Instead of getting a good enough feature today, we wait a decade for a perfect feature that might never come. I mean, it's really impressive how far they've pushed the aging Torque 3D engine graphically, for example, but we have to acknowledge that they're eventually going to reach a limit of what's possible. However, even when they do finally push out new features, they trap themselves in a loop. You might know this concept as the Golden Gate paradox, but in BeamNG we have our own version. I like to call it the Platin Gate paradox. The saying goes that once workers finish painting a large bridge, the end they started on already needs repainting. It's a never-ending job. BeamNG is suffering from this exact same cycle. The development team is expanding in both employee count and skill set. This means every new vehicle objectively outdoes everything released before it. It's amazing to see the progress, but it creates a massive consistency gap. From a game design perspective, the goal is to keep all content on the same level. But think about what that actually requires. When a remaster introduces a new standard, it immediately makes every other vehicle look outdated, failing to meet the very benchmark the game just set. Take the openable doors. These were first added to the Bishu Cobalt as part of its remaster in Update 0.26. It wasn't until Update 0.28, 7 months later, that the feature was fully rolled out to the existing vehicles. Now, obviously the team wasn't just working on door latches for half a year, but it proves the point. If quality assurance was their sole focus, the game wouldn't make any progress whatsoever. It would just be a team of very talented people repainting the same bridge for 10 years. Even features that seem small to us players can massively slow down development. We've been talking a lot about the devs' perfectionism, so you might ask, if these devs are such perfectionists, why does the menu lag like a PowerPoint from 2008? It's simple, the team mainly consists of engineers, not so many designers. An engineer doesn't care if the menu looks pretty, they care if the suspension geometry is correct. This creates the tech demo syndrome. While the backend is one of a kind, the front end feels like an afterthought. I called it a jack of all trades, but BeamNG is totally the undisputed master of software physics, and even more. But when it comes to user experience, it's definitely not the master. The game is not friendly to new users, I covered that in a previous video. To some, the rough edges are part of the sandbox charm, but to new players it creates a barrier to entry. I'm not saying the game needs to be dumbed down into a generic arcade racer. We've got plenty of those and BeamNG is certainly something unique. But the devs are effectively shooting themselves in the foot with the cluttered UI. No matter what genre a game belongs to, people shouldn't feel so overwhelmed by the UI that they literally abandon the game after an hour or two. Luckily, they're working on a massive UI overhaul right now, so maybe this chapter won't be relevant anymore in a year. The community is starting to get impatient though. BeamNG might never actually hit version 0.1, but the truth is, it doesn't really have to. We live in an era where AAA games are released finished on paper but broken in reality. Publishers force developers to meet deadlines, resulting in unoptimized games that all look and feel exactly the same. BeamNG has none of that pressure. Early access protects them from the corporate machine. It allows them to survive without the publisher breathing down their necks. If a publisher owned this game, they would have forced the devs to fake the traffic AI 5 years ago just to get it onto store shelves. Instead, the devs have the freedom to follow their own definition of finished. And if you look at the Steam Q&A, you can see exactly what that means. They aim for a fully fledged open world vehicle simulator, but because they keep raising their own standards, the point of as good as they can make it will technically never arrive. I call BeamNG a jack of all trades but a master of none. It tries to be a racing sim, a construction sandbox and a rally game all at once. But people often forget the full version of that quote. A jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. I would rather play a messy jack of all trades that attempts to simulate everything than a polished master of one like the modern Need for Speed titles that feel stale after a few hours. So, is the title of this video clickbait? Maybe a little. Theoretically, the devs could wake up tomorrow, slap a 0.1 sticker on the game and call it finished. but I doubt that's going to happen anytime soon. The devs still have a massive pipeline of features, and they never seem to run out of new ideas of what to add. Sure, they could fully release the game and just add those features in updates like they're doing it now, but that defeats the whole purpose of the early access label, which is to clearly state that the game hasn't reached its final form yet. As long as they're changing fundamental aspects of the game, there's no reason to rush to 0.1 release. If the price we pay is a game that is continuously under construction, then maybe finished is overrated.